Hello, my friend. Thank you so much for tuning into Peaceful Prosperity. I am Oliver Manalese. Today, I want to share with you the 3 ingredients for unlocking your potential. I was actually having a conversation with a friend of mine just recently. He is in the beginning stages of his coaching practice, and I love being able to share any insights or strategies that might help simplify the path ahead, and just use the experiences that I've gotten to be able to help the people around me. And one of the topics that we got into was the essential aspects, like really what coaching comes down to. And I think this is really helpful if you are in your own self-discovery process, or you are trying to help somebody else with theirs. And I think it's just these 3 really important pieces that we would all need to make sure that we have in place. And they're really kind of like the bigger questions. Who am I? Slash, who do I want to become? Where am I headed? Slash, what do I want? And then the third thing is, where am I right now? And I think it's really important for us to understand that without any of these pieces, like if you don't know who you are, it's going to be very difficult to decide what you want. If you don't know what you want, it's going to be very difficult to have an aim for yourself or a direction to be headed in. And if you don't know where you are, how are you going to give yourself an idea of what to do next? So I think these are just the 3 ingredients. If I was going to ask myself, I could only teach 3 things to help somebody tap into their potential, what would I say? Like, what would I teach? And these are those 3 things. So what most people do, so I work a lot with entrepreneurs, high achievers, goal-oriented people, and a lot of times, they're really good at taking action. They're really good at implementing. But unfortunately, as life happens, it can get really overwhelming. So there's times in life where you can get really stuck, and you can lose some steam, lose some momentum, and you can even burn yourself out and find yourself collapsing with exhaustion. I know that I have faced moments like that myself in my own entrepreneurial career, and I've guided and I've led many people along that path who have found themselves just completely just wiped and worn down from all of the work, all the work that they're doing to achieve their goals. And so I think it's so important for us to acknowledge that if you are lost, it's essentially because you are lacking clarity. If you feel stuck, because you don't have a sense of direction, and if you are overwhelmed, a big aspect of that is that there's maybe too many paths or too many options in front of you, and you don't know which one to choose. And if you're exhausted, typically it's because you haven't decided for yourself what to focus on, and you haven't given yourself enough time to recuperate and re-energize so that you can come back each day with a little bit more vigor, with a little bit more capacity. And so, hoping things will settle down is one way to get through it, right? Like to just be like, soon things will just clear and things will slow down, and I'll have some room to breathe. And that's kind of just like hoping and praying. You might just look outside of yourself, which a lot of people do, for some sort of solution or way through. And one of the challenges about that is we see what other people are doing, our friends or influencers on social media, and some of those things aren't aligned with who we are and what we actually want. And it looks great, it looks cool, and we think that maybe we'll try that template of life, maybe we'll try that strategy for living. But because it's an outside in type of phenomenon, you're taking something from outside of yourself and trying to apply it to you. Eventually it no longer aligns. Eventually you realize that it's actually not a fit. It's not authentic to who you are. And then I think the other aspect is sometimes we will add even more stresses to ourselves. So like new routines and new habits that we think will help reduce or resolve the stress that we are under. And I think this is like the more, optimistic route, to try to meditate and try to journal and do cold plunges. And, these are all positive, helpful, healthy things to do. But trying to learn what those benefits are and how to approach those strategies and the reasons behind them can feel like a lot more extra work on top of what we are already, drowning in when it comes to, where we are at. And I think it's a common struggle, because when we have such a high standard for ourselves, when we know that we are capable of so much, when we know that there's more gears that we can tap into inside of ourselves, but we're already capped, it just feels like it's very difficult to see outside of it. It's very difficult to break through that. And so to add to that overwhelm, I think it can lead to us just finding ourselves even more, kind of down on ourselves. Like, I feel like we can just make ourselves feel, we beat ourselves up even more. Because, like, wow, like, I couldn't even meditate for 5 minutes, and I couldn't even read for 5 minutes. I couldn't even work out for 50 minutes. Like, then we just add even more of these expectations that we're not meeting, on top of the fact that we know that we have more to offer to this world, and we have more potential inside of ourselves. So sometimes it can really counteract what we're trying to achieve. It can actually work against us in that sense. And so if that is you, and I know that this is going to be something that you will face in the future at some point. We all do, because that's just the natural evolution, the natural path as human beings as we evolve and grow. I think what's important for us to do instead is to just take a step back. I feel like if you're so in it, it's very difficult to see it from a different perspective. So you need to take a step back, like take a day off, take the weekend, and actually allow yourself to reorient your view of your current situation. I think a lot of this is, it's a sign that you've kind of lost your bearings. Like, you don't feel like your feet are on the ground, you don't feel rooted, and you can't see things clearly. So you're fogged up in your vision, and it's cloudy, your vision, and there's a lot of noise, and there's all these different opinions because you're seeking answers, you're seeking solutions. So there's all this noise, and they're conflicting, and you don't know what to listen to. So I think it's so important to really reduce the overwhelm. I think that's kind of like the first step, to reduce that intensity by just taking a little bit of a step back and creating some space. We need to create a little bit of distance from us and our problems, from us and our obstacles. And when I say problems and obstacles, the other way that you can be hearing it is opportunities, because really that's us getting to the other side of those things is actually the upside of our life, of our business. So really, these are opportunities for us for growth, for expansion, for our potential. And so we need to step back so that we can actually take a breath and ask ourselves, what is the actual problem? Like, what problem am I trying to solve? And that sometimes doesn't come to us very quickly, doesn't come to us immediately, and that's why we do need that space away from trying to implement and execute and take action our way through it. Sometimes we need to think before we act. Sometimes we need more awareness before we act, and I think this is what that first real step is about. And the three aspects that I introduced to you in the beginning of this conversation is, number one, who you are / who am I becoming? Who are you becoming? I think that's a big deal. That's a big question. That's really what reinvention is about. Self-discovery is about. Personal development is about. Who am I? Who am I becoming? And I feel like if you can start to create even just a little bit of clarity around that, it helps remove some of the issues that you're having, right? Like it brings you to a place of, oh, okay, like there's a centeredness, there's a rootedness, there's a sense of calm that it allows you to create, because you're like, you know what? Yeah, I'm getting a better sense of this is who I am and this is who I'm becoming. And that is helping me decide what I actually want for myself, which is number two. But before we get jump into that, what are some strategies or what are some questions that we could ask ourselves so that we can, start to get a little bit of a little bit more self-awareness around this area of who am I, and who do I want to become. I think one of the very simple things that you can do is pull out your journal, pull out a notebook and do this by hand, because I just feel like the mind being expressed through a physical experience of writing and then externalized on paper, it just does something for our brain, and being able to step outside and look at ourselves and our inner dialogue differently. So I suggest you doing this in your journal, but write down, who am I not, right? Like, and write a list, who I no longer am slash who I am not, and just write out that whole list. It's almost like you know who you don't want to be, and you know who you no longer are, right? So this could be like the job titles, the identities, the habits, the ways of being, the attributes, the behaviors, the thought patterns, all these things that you no longer are, they no longer serve you. I would write those things down, right? Like I'm no longer somebody who is distracted. I no longer am somebody who lets people walk all over them. I don't, I'm no longer the person who is I'm no longer a people pleaser, right? So you might have this whole list of 10, 20, or even 30 things that just clarify like who I am not. And you might be thinking like, well, aren't we trying to find out like who I am and who I want to be? Like, why am I asking these negative questions, right? Well, it's really simple, because when you get really, it's our mind is oriented in a way where we can identify the negative first. And it's more apparent, it's more easy to identify. And part of the exercise is to look at the reverse. Well, if you're not a people pleaser, then who are you, right? If you're not somebody who lets people walk all over you and has no boundaries, then who are you, right? So it helps you flip it. And I think it's a very simple way of kind of getting access to who you are and who you want to become. So I think that is a step that you can take when you're journaling. Another thing that you can do is start asking yourself, what am I naturally angry about? So like I feel like we can feel like being angry or being pissed off is wrong. Like, you shouldn't be angry, like you should be positive all the time, you should be happy. And I think that is very detrimental to us as human beings, because it doesn't honor the natural emotional experience that we are having. And there are actually some traditions, like I remember my acupuncture just the other day was acupuncturist. She was just saying, like, in Chinese medicine, there's something called sacred rage, or there's a sacredness to anger. And I think because it's an action creating, it is there's a resonance, there's an energy there that can be used, right? Like, why is that there? So I feel like we need to start to respect, our anger. And so you might want to journal on what pisses me off about the world, about my industry, about the way I've been living, or the way I see other people living, and be okay with the fact that these things make you angry, right? Like, you're probably having these things rise up in you right now, just thinking about what those questions are. See how immediate that feeling is in your body? You're already reverberating. And so I think we gotta acknowledge the possibility that we are angry, that we are pissed off, that our senses are heightened around certain topics of discussion, around certain areas of life, because perhaps we have something that we need to do about that area. Maybe this is one of the ways that we are here to serve others, serve the world. Maybe these are important changes that we need to make within our own lifestyle, our own family, it means we have something to say, right? Like we have a thought, we have thought about our opinion and our perspective on these specific things. And so I think getting in touch with that can also help speak to what you value and what actually matters to you, right? Because obviously if it didn't matter to you, you would have no emotional response, right? You'd be indifferent. And if you're indifferent, then like that doesn't really help. What we're trying to find out is what's going to spark you, like what's going to light you up. And that's one of the ways that you can look at it. I think a more positive aspect, right, is to think about and maybe even journal on what am I naturally curious about? What can I spend hours a day effortlessly consuming, learning about, absorbing, geeking out about? And so there might be, different aspects like of hobbies and curiosities and things that you are just naturally passionate about. I think when your life becomes a pursuit of what you are curious about, then the energy for it is endless. Like it's constantly rejuvenating itself because you're following what is pulling you. And so I think it's important for you to start gaining some awareness around what you're naturally interested in. And then the last piece I would say is, now that you've looked at like who am I not and who am I no longer, and you've looked at like what has been pissing me off and what really gets me really angry, and what am I curious about. I feel like from that you can start to distill who you are. And this is not like concrete, it's definite and forever, but this is a great way to get things going, get things started with some I am statements. So I would journal, and create these I am statements of, all right, so if this is the stuff that I wrote down, what does that say about who I am, like, and who I'm becoming? So maybe you start writing like, I am somebody who takes care of themselves before anything else. I am the type of person who has quiet in the mornings. I am the type of person who consciously chooses where they spend their money, right? So I know who I'm purchasing from, and that is reflecting what I actually value, right? So create I am statements that start to reflect who you are. And I think this is a great starting place when it comes to this first ingredient of knowing who I am and knowing who I'm becoming, right? So you've started to develop this awareness, which really, it's the prerequisite to transformation. Like knowing who you are is a prerequisite to knowing what you want, which is the second ingredient. And so let's get into ingredient number 2, which is what do you want / where are you going? And I think this is kind of having an idea of what your destination actually is, right? So if you feel like there's too many options, there's so many choices, it's like, oh, I could start a business, or I can, change my target market, or I can create a new service, or I can get a new job, or I can move cities, or I could invest in real estate, or I can invest in the stock market, I can invest in Bitcoin. Like there's so many options, right? I can go carnivore, I can go vegan, I can go keto. Like you think about like, there is no shortage of pathways and options depending on what we are like, no matter what we are actually trying to create for ourselves. And so that level of overwhelm can just leave us paralyzed, right? Analysis paralysis is a very real thing. And so when you start to get some clarity around what it is that you want and where you are headed, then the directions, right, like the paths, start to disappear, right? You have less and less options. Now this is a no, this is a no, this is a no, this is a no. And you start to get really, really more dialed in on what to aim towards. So as human beings, we have a natural inclination to have higher aims for ourselves. We need to have something to focus on. We need a goal. We need a milestone that we can aim towards, that we can channel our energy, that we can focus ourselves on, so that we can have the sense that we are making progress in our life, in our business, in our relationships. And so one of the ways that you can create this for yourself is, I think her name is Millman, Debbie Millman, I think it is. I remember learning this years ago, listening to the Tim Ferriss podcast interview with Debbie Millman, and she was talking about a remarkable day in my life 10 years from now essay that she would assign to her creative students. And so it's really like creating this process of writing out, mapping out in detail, what does a remarkable day in your life look like in the future. And for some people that I've worked with, they don't even have this capacity to dream about what they want for the future, or some people have created like vision boards and created a vision, but they haven't done it in this type of detail. And so it might be really interesting to actually create, like start creating, like just like you're a child and envisioning, like, where do I want to be, what do I see for myself years from now. And so you, of course, you can't do this if you're super busy. You do have to take a step back to get that sense of where your life is headed. So I think writing out a very clear idea of what you are dreaming and what you are aiming your life towards like this can be very, very helpful. The other thing that I said is, like, with the prior list that you created, right? Like, who am I not, who I no longer am, what am I naturally curious about, what pisses me off, like turn them around, like flip them around and actually write, like, what is this? If I was going to look at this from an outside perspective, what does this person want for themselves? Like, what do they want to achieve? What would they want to create? And I think you can start to get a sense of, oh, this might be it, like that might be it, and eventually you start to see, like, there's a cohesive picture, and it's going to be unique to you because it's all of it's the culmination of your own experiences, your own lessons about life, and being exposed to different ideas and ways of doing life, and it's going to culminate in this more cohesive idea of where you are headed for yourself. And I think the last thing is kind of more of a idea of being a dreamer again. I've had many conversations lately with clients who have, they have foregone their capacity to dream because life got in the way, right? We just created stories of, like, well, I guess I have to, like, well, sacrifice myself and put myself last and focus on my kids and focus on my business and my clients and put everyone first, and it doesn't matter what I want for, like. So I think getting back to the place of, like, no, but you need to have a dream to live for, right? Like, you need to let yourself be exposed to different people, different topics, different books, different lifestyles, so that you could actually start piecing together what it is that you might want for yourself. In so many aspects, it is being exposed to these alternative ideas, alternative ways of living. We need to be exposed to those to even know that they're even possible, right? Like, if you're just living in your own box and other people are living in a similar box, how are you going to know that, oh, you can do that? Oh, really? You can create that for yourself? If you're like, one of my clients calls himself a cityite. I love that. He grew up in a city, so, like, for him to be exposed to, like, let's say a friend of mine who's he's a gardener, right? He grows vegetables and fruits and takes care of his land. It's like, to be like, you might hear about it, think about it, oh, that sounds like a cool idea, but you gotta, when you're physically there, when you physically see, like, what it takes and how much thought goes into it, right? And the seasonality and how what you're thinking about is constantly evolving and changing throughout the year, and you're just exposed to this alternative life that you could potentially want for yourself. But how would you know if you're not doing it? Or if you are a 9-to-5er and you've worked at a job and have had a steady paycheck for many, many years, how are you going to know what else is possible for you if you don't come in contact with or get to know somebody who has been traveling, all across the world and working remotely, right? Like, and actually can see themselves as, oh yeah, this is where I want to live. I'm going to move to this country. I'm going to work over here. Or even the idea of of entrepreneurship, right? Like actually running your own business, or and being a consultant or a freelancer, and the flexibility that creates, like being exposed to that is a whole other world. So I think being exposed to the dreams that other people have can be very interesting for you. So what do we got so far? Who you are slash who you're becoming. That's number one. Number two, what you want slash where you're headed. Awesome. So those are two out of the three ingredients. Like think about how much that actually already relaxes your nervous system, right? Having those things in place, you're like, oh, okay. Like there's a little bit more calmness, which is really beautiful. That's what we're after, right? Like being in a calmer state, in a more relaxed state, you actually have more access to your inner capabilities, your gifts, your skills, right? Your genius. And then this third piece, like I think this third piece is the thing that might be the most elusive for us, because I don't know if it's talked about enough. But the third piece is, where are you now, right? Where are you now compared to where you want to be? I love the analogy of using Google Maps, right? Like your Google Maps is useless if it doesn't know where you are. So you can punch in your destination, but it has to know where you are in order to give you directions. It's like you need that "you are here" sign, like the sense of like, oh, this is my current situation, my current reality. This is where I'm at. And compared to where I actually want to be, here are some next steps that will allow me to keep moving forward in that direction. Like having that is going to be essential along the journey, right? If you're trying to tap back into your gifts, you're trying to lean into your potential, you're trying to move forward in your life or in your business. And so if you don't, if you feel like you don't know what to focus on, and you feel like everything is important, and you're not sure what is the most relevant thing, it can feel really, really disempowering in that sense. And in many ways, it's about finding out, where are you right now? And some of the ways that I suggest that you do this is, so now when you have clarity about who you are and where you want to be, ask yourself, like, what are the metrics that are going to tell me that I'm actually moving forward? You got to ask yourself, what are the measures of success, or what are the measures of progress, right? Is it a feeling, right? Like I'm feeling calmer, I'm feeling more confident, or is it something that's something that's very tangible? Is it a dollar amount? Is it how many hours of work you put a week? Or is it another type of amount, right? Like where I have, I'm able to help this many people, or write this many like if you're a writer, I write this many words every single day, or, like you got to decide for yourself, based on where you are headed, what are the signs that you are making progress, right? And these are the things that you got to measure yourself against. And this might be 3, 4, or 5 major things, so like, for instance, in the work that I do with my clients, a lot of times it is about creating some sense of calmness. So a lot of clients want more peace, right? So if they can see that their nervous system is more relaxed and they feel more centered, compared to when they first start working with me, they know that that's going to be progress. And then there's other clients who are actually like very numerically driven, because it's, they have a very business oriented goal, and it's like, I want to hit my first 10K month, let's say. So we know, right? Like there's a measure of success called a 10K month, but with the caveat of like, I want to do that with my gifts, with the service that I've created that revolves around my unique skill set, my genius, and and not burning out and not exhausting myself, and working with people that I enjoy, right? So there's other aspects to it. But if you know that that is the metric, and you look at, okay, well, what did you do this month? What did you do last month? Then you kind of have an idea of where are you now relative to what your goal is. Then I have some clients who are, they're actually time oriented. They might think about, well, I work 70 hours a week, and ideally I want to work less than 30 hours a week. And so that is an important metric of success, right? If they're aiming towards 30 hours a week, and now they're, this week they're at 65, and then they're at 60 and 55, you can already tell, just from listening to that, there's signs of progress. There's a way that we can indicate for ourselves, oh yeah, I'm moving forward. And as human beings, we need that reassurance. We need that ability to know that we are working, and we're putting effort into something, and it's turning into a result. Another thing that you can do is, look at that dream, that remarkable day that you've created for yourself, and work backwards, right? Like, work backwards. Like, what milestones, what other goals, what other projects get me there, right? Like, that takes some time to deconstruct and unpack, but I think that can be extremely helpful for you as well. But ultimately, I think having some self-assessment helps, right? Scoring yourself. So if you create those measures of success for yourself, just having like some way of scoring, like from 1 to 10, how am I doing with the calmness piece? From 1 to 10, how am I doing with the first 10K month piece? From 1 to 10, how am I doing with the 30-hour work week piece? Or whatever, fill in the blank, whatever your measure of success is. And I think that will actually allow you to create a sense of where you are. It'll give you that you are here sign. Some other practical ones that a lot of clients have needed to do is like really looking at their finances, what's coming in versus what's going out, what they owe versus what they own. Some other things that people have really needed to do as well is like, okay, well, the well-being checklist is a major one that clients really, really love. And I talk a lot about it in my book, The Daily Prosperity Method. It is the pillar of well-being, and it's what allows you to create that capacity for yourself. And so if you are scoring yourself like, oh, I did this practice, this self-care practice, and you can track it and you can measure it, that is incredibly helpful as well. And I've had a lot of clients who sometimes it's about like seeing how often they're working out or meditating or how much they weigh on the scale. Like if you have a certain goal weight, just scaling, being on the scale and knowing where you're at today. So these are all different ways that you can explore the here-ness, right? Like, who am I? Like, where's the you are here sign, right? Where are you now? So that you can ask yourself, what can I do now? Right? What can I do next? Now that I know where I am, what can I do next to help create more progress for myself? So those are the 3 ingredients. If you are a coach and you're helping people tap into their potential, if you are a high achiever, you're an entrepreneur, and you're trying to tap into your own potential, but you find yourself exhausted or burnt out or lost or overwhelmed, not sure what to do next, I highly recommend that you take that step back and you do these action items around first ingredient number 1, who am I / who am I becoming? Because when you know who you are, it's the prerequisite to who you're, what you actually want for yourself, which is ingredient number 2. What do I want / where am I headed? Because you want to have a sense of aim for yourself, that your life is headed in the direction that you want it to be. And when you've done that, so now you have a destination, ingredient number 3, you got to know where you are, relative to your destination. In comparison with your destination, because when you know who you are, you can actually decide what the next most appropriate step is that you need to take, what the next most appropriate milestone is for you to work towards in that general direction. And so this is something that I love to work on with my clients. I talk a lot about it in my upcoming weekend workshop. And depending on when you are listening to this, this is June 8th and 9th, 2024. I'm hosting a weekend workshop. It is the vision, values, and goals workshop. So we're going to be spending 2 days together to dial these specific things in, right? To actually create clarity in these things so that you can start aligning your day-to-day life with your vision, with your values, and with your goals. So if that's something that you are interested in, you can use the link below to get information on how to register for that. I'll put that in the description. You can also check out the work that I do with my book, The Daily Prosperity Method, and that is, how to expand your capacity by owning the day. And ultimately, it is a toolkit. It is a set of guiding principles, philosophies, and practices so that you can allow your, have yourself be in, invest in yourself so that you are energized enough to conquer the obstacles and the opportunities ahead, and you can actually find a sense of joy and peace in your day-to-day life. And I'm really excited to share that book with you as well. Make sure that there's a link to it. But if you want some actual help from me and you want to see if there's a fit in terms of us working together, I have one-on-one and group coaching programs that are available that we can sit down, we can have a discussion about your goals, we can have a discussion about what paths are available to you that you can take and see if it's a match for us to work together. And I'll make sure to put a link there below as well. It's olivermanalese.com/call if you want to book a call. And that is it. I am so grateful to be in this conversation with you. Thank you so much for tuning in, and see you next time.